Hi everyone, Andy here at Spymaster Gaming. Welcome back. Today I'm joined by my good friend Dan from Nexus Wargaming. Hello Dan, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
We're going to be talking some Trench Crusade. Obviously, it's the game that has just captured the hearts and minds of many people. The Kickstarter is doing phenomenally at the moment, with still like a week to go, and they've nearly hit the 2 million mark, I think, in
Wow.
terms of revenue. Um, so we're just going to have a bit of a chat in terms of how we think it's going and where we think this game is going to go and what we'll have to look forward to. So, have you been keeping an eye on the Kickstarter?
I did, and when I heard 2 million, I think I stopped watching at 1 million because they had stretch goals, which I think were at 1 million. And then
Yeah,
so it's funny, I think it's only been a few days and already at 2 million. It's just yeah, I mean, I think it's really great. And I think it's well deserved. I mean, there's really not a lot to be said about it. It's great crew, great artwork. And I guess we'll get into that. We'll talk about you really see where some of these people where they're coming from, in their past work about why this game is so good. But yeah, I think even 2 million, it's probably going to be more. My goodness. It's crazy.
yeah. I think they weren't expecting it. I mean, the updates that they've been giving, I think that they're a team without sleep at the moment, just trying to keep on top of things. Um, But you know what? Hats off to them as a collective. They've been putting out the sculpts, they've been putting out the lore, all without like being properly supported financially. I think for over a year now. And to see this come to fruition and like the response from the community, I think has been incredible. And it just shows, I think, how people are crying out for something new yet familiar, still new, but
Yeah, it's hard to, and it's funny. We had Scanner Barkley come on the Any War Game Anytime podcast, and we talked about this. But it's hard to pinpoint it, but there is something that this game is hitting on that that I think is just both brilliant and also just from a kind of from even a social perspective. It's interesting to even wonder why this game. And I think you're right. We can get into the context of wargaming right now about, why people are. I think that's a conversation into itself. Why are people so desiring this sort of game and setting? Yeah, yeah,
well, I know for me, it was the freedom to imagine and not be told no.
yeah.
Nothing is off the table. And even now that they're putting out the official scoops, they still say nothing is off the table. If you can imagine it, if you can create it, that model is going to be usable on the tabletop. And I think that speaks to a lot of people who want to tell their stories, who want to envisage themselves in model form or write a story and create a model to go with that story. Um, it's
Yeah,
it's it's a thing of beauty, and it's a thing lost in modern wargaming, I feel.
yeah, you couldn't say it faster than me. And I'm gonna try. It's funny when we're talking, you're saying exactly what's on my mind, and I completely agree. Yeah, it reminds me of just, and I say it earlier versions of 40K, whenever the game was actually geared towards its old RPG base. Remember, this was Rogue Trader was an RPG, and then second and third, and this encouragement to build your own, to create your own, commander. Instead, it's just, I'm playing whoever Gilliman for the 500th time. So, yeah, I do agree. Old, familiar, but still cool.
And I think seeing just people getting so fervorous with excitement and the amount of terrain builds going on and the amount of just, oh, look, I've used some balsa wood and I've made a couple of crucifixes, or I've made some fake barbed wire. Brilliant. Just really simple things, which again, back from a time where, the company in question, you know, they used to put out books on how to
Hmm.
make terrain out of stuff you could find around the house.
Mm-hmm.
And those days, I think, if you're newer to the hobby, you've not seen those concepts. You're told to buy everything and not make anything yourself, which, and I think a lot of like, I'd be really interested to do a poll on sort of the age range of all the, of the Facebook group of whether they are, when they first came into the hobby, because I think you're probably looking at about 20 years ago, most of them are going to come into the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a step back for them to enjoy what it once was. So,
Well, that would be so cool to actually, because I wonder what newer gamers, that'd be interesting to find out.
mm,
It is just this, there is this experiment that we all want to know. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting to sort of see this happening in context. Yeah. Um,
I think the interesting thing for me, what's come to light through the stretch goals as well, and I used the term the other day when I was talking to a couple of guys locally who are also backing it. It's almost like an assembly of the old guard of Games Workshop, those that have moved on to pastures new, and almost like, yeah, Avengers assemble kind of thing. Let's get all of the heavy hitters back in to create something new. And they've got the skill. We've seen it in the stretch goals and locks. You've got the likes of Graham McNeil, you've got the likes of Gav Thorpe, all of whom are very, very good writers. Andy Chambers as well.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you know, he him alongside Thomas Pernin created some of the older specialist games, within Games Workshop. So to have people like that come back together for something, a new IP, I think it's very, very exciting to see. Um,
And it is a different mentality that those guys come with, where this is what I always say, they are creating a world. They're not creating a story. And I think that is very different than this new guard of, said company, where there's a lot of interest in the story, what happens in this story, where these older guard people, they really knew it was about what you really people want. They want a world to go play in. They don't want to be told. And they understand that. And I think that's the reason that, well, one of the many reasons that Trench Crusade is resonating. Yeah, yeah.
I completely agree. I think it's just very exciting. I mean, it's almost sad to a point where I see the names pop up and I'm like, oh, who else is going to get involved in this? People I've obviously never met, but they have clout, they have the ability, and I think it's just really, really encouraging to see. And again, an indie project started by three guys. I mean, yes, they are very, very talented individuals, but for them to attract, other such sort of respected names from within the wargaming community, I think is just it's a seal of approval into itself, which is great.
Yeah.
Um,
Is there anything in particular? I want to see the map. I'm a tactical guy, and I'm looking forward to the map of this world. That's the thing that's driving me is I want to get this map and I want to plan a campaign.
yeah, I likewise. I think you get the bits of lore teased out. I mean, I'd really want to know more about the land fortress of Britannia. What's that about? Um, what state is Great Britain in this timeline? I think um I really want to know sort of more about the Germanic elements of it as well, because what I would like to see come out into this is sort of like the pagan elements untouched by Christianity, sort of
Hmm.
maybe like the remnants of Norse worshippers, maybe in the Scandinavian Germanic countries, um, just to see if there's any sort of variety with factions that could come into play there. But again, that's what I like about it. We're already inventing our own stories and ahead of what could be,
And that's
because
and with the open license that they created, that's actually encouraged, really,
yes, yeah, I think that post is going to make sure that this game has legs. I mentioned to you, obviously, before we started, the only time that I was aware of such a license existing was for the likes of Dungeons and Dragons, which in of itself is obviously very free form. You can create campaigns and worlds as long as they're all adhering to the the fifth edition system. I know they've moved on now to the next edition, but the fact that they're giving people the opportunity to actually tie in their stories to this world where they'll potentially sense check it and weave it into the greater narrative, that is incredibly exciting. I think, again, never seen it done before, sort of at this level. It's going to be very, very cool to see what members of the community can come up with and see if they can get that seal of approval and be like, yep, your stuff's good enough to make it into the official canon, which I think is it's a challenge to people if they can flex their creativity that way. And just the possibilities are endless. They really, really are, because like I said, I've just come up with something about paganism. Someone else is probably thinking of something similar, but maybe a slightly different variant, and we don't know which one could end up being written into canon, which is
And
great.
and maybe, and this is the tactical thing, because I don't want to undercut. I know I got into it from the lore. It was actually you, Andy, and Scanner Barkley who got me into the lore. But the game itself, I haven't played it, feels really nice. Just sort of watching it. I love arming up. I'm really just, I'm a tactical guy. So I'm already starting to, it's funny, the wheels are already turning and I'm planning out strategies in my mind, because the system is, I really like it. It's really cool system. So yeah, yeah.
I look forward to your tactical analysis in the future. For everyone watching, if you haven't checked out Dan's channel, Nexus Wargaming, he has a very good analytical mind and breaks down wargaming to a tactical level. So I suggest checking it out. There you go. You can have a plug halfway through
Oh,
there.
thank you. No, thank you so much.
Save wait until the end.
Yeah,
Um,
but no, I think so. And so for me, thinking that way, campaigns, I mean, like, is this a time that we can actually have a campaign happen? And the campaign, like, and this is, I think, where we're all at. Um, we're all already expanding it. I'm thinking about, I can't wait for a large scale Trench Crusade game to come out. Like, oh, that would be great, you know? So I think that's interesting that we're already starting to, the wheels are turning in the community, right? I want to see a large scale game. I'd love to see some campaigns run to actually decide this by skill. You know, I think that
mm.
would be cool. Yeah, yeah.
And I think as well, you mentioned like the tight rule set. I mean, I agree. I've played, probably about 10 or 11 games now. It's elegant. You can see that tactical choices do matter. But you mentioned the narrative and you come back to the campaigns. And for me, I think that is the selling point as well, is that there's not a competitive undercurrent to this. It's not to say that there will be, but I think people are driven by the story and the stories that they can tell in what is just a very, very quirky setting. And I think where said company has focused mainly on catering to the competitive side of things, I think a lot of people who may have been burned by that or not really bought into that mindset have come to this thinking, I can tell a story about my soldiers and just have fun.
Is it,
And
yeah, it's so fascinating too. I feel like said company has, to a point, lowered the bar on what we should expect as consumers for a game. Oh, we can't balance our game. Oh, lore is hard. We can't satisfy everybody. And yet, what was it? Three guys, there's just this cobbled together group of people put this thing together, and it's almost like, wait, that isn't true. You know, wait, no, if you invest in it, you actually can have these things, you know, because you're right. I think, it's ticking all boxes. Yeah, yeah.
I think as well, they are free though, like whereas you may be, if you're writing within uh, sort of that company's universes, you are hamstrung by what you can and can't add at a top level.
Hmm. Hmm.
Whereas this is no one's going to tell them no
Yeah.
because it's brand new. Um, yeah, I honestly think though, it's really encouraging to see. I've mentioned like the non-competitive side of it. There have been tournaments organized already with beta rules out. We're on version 1.5 of the rules. Um, Tournaments were being organized all the way back in 1.2,
Hmm.
which just shows, people are they're desperate for something that is, you know, genuinely quite new and refreshing. And I think, I first joined the Facebook group for this earlier on this year, probably about April time, and it was only about 8,000 members then, and it's nearly 30,000 now. To be fair, I haven't checked it. It might
Oh
even be over
wow, wow.
30,000 now. And for a game that's not even out, again, it's unprecedented. I've never seen a following. There's games out which have been out for years that don't have that following.
Hmm.
Um, and it feels like lightning in a bottle, that they've just managed to harness, and I just hope they ride it for as long as they can.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I think that's like a nice little segue into like where we think the future of this is as well, because we've talked a bit about stretch goals in terms of people coming in, like obviously the heavy hitters, but they've said they're pausing the stretch goals now. Um, which I'm actually okay with. What do you think about that? With a week to go in the Kickstarter, what do you think about them pausing stretch goals now?
It's a great decision. I was actually surprised in what they gave us already. No, I think it's really good. You want to get out quality now. Now you want that map. You want I think it's the short story. I haven't, I got involved, I think a couple of days afterwards, and life happens, but I think now it's all about taking, refining it, getting out, and really cementing a foundation. I hope that it does continue. I think it's got legs. I think the narrative also has enough room to grow. It's not quite where 40K was, where we're literally at, 1 minute before midnight. I think there is some growth. And I think that's actually cool. Like there is some opportunities for, the heretic legions to actually get some victories, or maybe the other way, right?
Hmm.
So I think there is something, and I think that's another advantage. The lore has room to grow. They didn't, set it, where it's almost like what's happened with 40K. Anything that happens just seems to just be, why isn't everything blowing up? So yeah, yeah, I think so.
I, for me personally, they've hit a really good, obviously, target with the amount that they've raised. They've alluded to it within the um, sort of the updates on the Kickstarter. I honestly hope it's reinvested. Even though I do 3D printing and I've backed the STL, um, the all-in STL package. I would love to see this manufactured in plastic. I would
Mhm.
love to see hard plastic kits, and get more and more people involved in it. And I think we're still in that we're still in that era at the moment where even though 3D printing is obviously it's massive, um, but I think there is still, whether it be an outdated mindset, that you don't have a tangible product until you have it physically in a friendly local game store.
Mhm.
It's a prevailing attitude, I think, amongst like a large segment of the community.
I think they did
But
very good to start out with a skirmish game. That's going to
I
be
think so.
much, yeah. And I think that is the real strength of this. Starting it out with a skirmish game, it's going to be much easier to get those people in. So yeah, yeah, we will see. I think we're hopeful. But it's funny, like you mentioned lightning in a bottle, and how can you predict that? Like, what really, the game hasn't even started yet, So I think I know everyone I talk to is interested in the game. So I know that I'll be producing some content for it. I'm looking forward to digging into it. I have some other stuff to take care of, but afterwards, I think 2025, this is definitely on the docket. And I'm looking forward to playing you in a game as well.
Yes, it'll be my first attempt at doing tabletop simulator. It'll probably be clunky, but I'll give it my best shot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But no, what faction? I know you like New Antioch. You know, you've mentioned to me several times that you're taken by New Antioch. Is there any particular flavor within New Antioch that you like over anything else, or
This game was tailored for me. I think I did a video where I talk about like my history. I literally, before this game ever heard of this game, past 10 years, I have a Knights Templar Kingdoms of Men for Kings of War where I played for years as knights. And I just like New Antioch is literally tailor made for me. It's I love that even in Kings of War, and I did in Age of Fantasy, where human beings fighting against, like, I love the underdog thing. I'm all about the underdog, all about this. I'm just a guy, I'm in some armor, and I'm going to go, but through tactics and through, I love the new Antiac rules about the fire team rules,
yeah,
about coordination. Their special abilities are very tactically driven. I think how they have certain units. You can move, force the opponent to move out of order. So
that's right.
it's
Yeah,
yeah, I love those types of armies that are very they're not the best at one thing, but they sort of have to have that in management and know when and where. So it actually to me, I haven't played the army, but it feels a lot like Eldar that I play in Epic, where it's a very like I said, you're not tough. It's very tactical, right? You have to be careful, right? Because you're not tough and you don't have lots of people. So you have to sort of play that. But yeah, I think that's where I'm looking for. I think I've already got a color scheme in mind. I'm actually just looking for some really good. Now I supported the STLs, but I wouldn't mind fighting some of the STLs to be a little more ostentatious. I want to do something more of an Italian or Spanish. Um,
interesting.
yeah, yeah, sort of that sort
Yeah,
of sort of the Franciscan side of the church.
it'd be nice. Yeah, I mean, there's so many denominations of Christianity. Like again, that it's your playground, isn't it? To just bring in whatever whatever style of Christianity you want. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you do some conversions if you can style it out potentially.
I'm gonna
Um,
I'm gonna try. I'm not good at converter. I'm not a good painter, but I feel this is a time for me to up my game. This game makes me want to get better. So there you go.
the thing is, I think for a lot of people, you say that they're probably skills that you had once and you've lost because you've been conditioned not to use them.
Yeah, maybe. I hope so. I hope so. How about you? So what faction is really drawing you?
Me, it's the Iron Sultanate.
Mm.
I really want to paint the alchemist model. There's something about that model. She's so mysterious. Uh, yeah, but the whole sort of like alchemically pumped up ammunition, creatures that have been made in laboratories. It's very much like it's the steampunky faction that with monsters and brass and gears and things that are that shouldn't work but they do work.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and the assassins, man, the assassins are disgusting. Um, and I would be that guy who would run three assassins. Um,
They are, and the Iron Sultanate art, they're to me the most visually great. I love the design. I have a visual preference to them. Um, they're not quite what I would play as far as what I'm passionate about as the theme goes, but I do. The models are great. They're
yeah.
so like the Heritage factions are great, but you can sort of feel, they're monsters. But this one, they has that interesting, nice little touch. Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think that's a good place to bring it to an end. I think that's a good first discussion, and I hope that this will be the start of fair few more with regards to when obviously the landscape of the game evolves after the Kickstarter, and we'll just keep an eye on it. So thanks very much for joining me, Dan. It's been great to have you, and For everyone watching, check out Dan's channel. There you go. There's a second plug for you.
Thanks.
I'll put
Thanks
the
so much.
link in the description below. And if you've liked what you've seen, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel as well. Thanks very much, and I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, Andy.